This is Andrew. Thanks for joining me again. This is the third video of the complete Endgame series that I'm doing on the 136 total Endgame positions from the book Grandmaster Ram. Now, this is pretty much a comprehensive series that covers all of the basic endgame positions that you need to know in order to play at theoretically a grandmaster's level. 136 positions is a lot of positions, but in the end it's pretty manageable. I started with the basics. We're still on king and pawn, and this position is white king versus black king, with one pawn on the rook, basically on the edge of the board, rook pawn. And the important information to know in this position is that it doesn't matter who is to move, whether white or black. This position is always a draw, because there's no way that white can force black out of the corner and to queen his pawn. So basically the moves, if it's white to move, we'll go through just a sample line. Alright, so if the king moves to b6, then the black king just moves and gains the opposition again. And now if white advances his pawn, well, he can move back, but if white advances his pawn to a6, then black simply just moves back to a8, and there's nothing that white can do to force the black king out of that corner. Now if he moves his pawn forward to a7, it's a stalemate. So that's pretty much the end of that. So the theory behind these 136 endgame positions is quite interesting. It's not just to learn a bunch of random disconnected information. It's to understand how a chess game will end. And so, for example, in this position, you don't necessarily need to remember the exact position. You just need to remember the information that if the white king is in front of his pawn on the rook, if he's in front of his pawn, a rook pawn on the edge of the board, it's much, much harder to win when it simplifies than it is in the center of the board. So this information is very important to know, so that when you simplify for a more complicated position, you'll be able to immediately recognize when it's advantageous and when it's not. So we'll go through this one more time here. Another variation. So, for example, if white tries to outflank black, he just simply can't do it. So if he, let's see, so if he moves his pawn forward, black can go back. Now if black will simply just come forward and he has to protect his pawn again, so there's nothing he can do. Now even if black makes a mistake and goes here, where white can gain the opposition, black simply just goes back again. Now if he moves his pawn to a7, it's stalemate. So there's no way that white can outflank black, and there's nothing that black has to worry about. So that's pretty much the important information in this position to remember. So not necessarily the specific position, but the idea behind it, of the rook pawn and the king versus the king. Alright, so I hope that helps. This is the third position. I think there's a total of 22 pawn positions that we're going through, and I'm going to try to keep these videos short and informative. So you could watch one a day, or go through them in succession, and try to get a deeper understanding. It's also good to analyze them by yourself too. You're always going to learn better when you're thinking by yourself, using your brain. I just encourage you, if you like this series, to subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Alright, thank you very much. Bye-bye.